There's a myth that's infected World War II history, like a virus. You've heard it 1,000 times. The Sherman was a death trap, a rolling coffin. American tankers called it the Ronson because it lit up on the first strike. Meanwhile, the German Tiger was invincible, a beast that dominated every battlefield it rolled onto. Except, here's the problem. Almost none of that is true. And today, I'm going to show you the numbers that prove the Sherman crew had a better chance of surviving than you'd ever believe. While Tiger crews faced odds that would make you think twice about climbing into that so-called supertank. Let's start with the most shocking statistic. When an American Sherman got knocked out in combat, on average, one crew member died out of 5. That's a 20% fatality rate per destroyed tank. Now, compare that to the Soviet T-34, which everyone loves to praise. When a T-34 got hit, 2 crew members died out of 4. That's 50%. Soviet tankers had a coin flip chance of dying when their tank was destroyed. But wait, you're thinking, what about the legendary Tiger? Surely those thick armor plates and that massive 88mm gun kept German crews safer, right? Wrong. German tankers faced similar or worse odds than their Soviet counterparts, and here's why. The Tiger's biggest problem wasn't armor, it was reliability. These things broke down constantly. Transmission failures, engine fires, track problems. For every Tiger destroyed by enemy fire, several more were abandoned by their crews due to mechanical breakdown. And when you're abandoning a 60-ton monster deep in enemy territory, your survival odds just dropped to basically 0. The Sherman had something the Tiger never did. It had escape hatches that actually worked under pressure. American engineers designed the Sherman with crew survival in mind from day one. The driver and co-driver had their own hatches. The turret crew had 2 separate hatches on top. Compare this to early T-34s, which had a single massive hatch on the turret that required superhuman strength to open and would trap both crew members if it jammed. Here's where it gets interesting. The Sherman's crew layout was specifically designed for quick evacuation. When a Sherman caught fire, which, yes, did happen, the crew had multiple escape routes, and usually between 15 to 30 seconds to get out before ammunition cooked off. British tankers who switched from Crusader tanks to Shermans reported feeling significantly safer because of these exit options. But the real secret to Sherman crew survival wasn't just the hatches. It was American combined arms doctrine. Sherman tanks rarely operated alone. They moved with infantry support, artillery on call, and air superiority overhead. When a Sherman got hit, there were immediate recovery vehicles nearby, medics ready to treat wounded crew, and covering fire to suppress the enemy that knocked them out. This meant even wounded tankers had a fighting chance of making it to an aid station. German Tiger crews didn't have this luxury, especially after 1943. They were often operating in small numbers, surrounded by hostile forces, with no air cover and limited artillery support. When a Tiger got knocked out, even if the crew escaped, they were stranded kilometers behind enemy lines with no realistic extraction plan. The ammunition storage also played a massive role. Late-war Shermans used wet stowage, where ammunition racks were surrounded by water glycerin jackets. This innovation dropped the Sherman's catastrophic fire rate from about 60% to less than 15%. German tanks, including the Tiger, kept their ammunition in dry racks throughout the war. One penetrating hit could set off a chain reaction that turned the entire tank into an inferno in seconds. Let's talk about the famous German 88. Yes, it could penetrate a Sherman from 3,000 meters. But here's what they don't tell you. The Sherman's 75mm gun could penetrate a Tiger's side armor from 1,000 meters. And American tactics focused on exactly that, flanking attacks using superior numbers and mobility. For every Tiger that knocked out 5 Shermans from long range, 3 more Shermans would flank it and pump rounds into its thinner side armor. The Tiger weighed 54 tons and had a top speed of 23 miles per hour on roads, less than 10 off-road. The Sherman weighed 30 tons and could hit 30 miles per hour almost anywhere. When you're slower and more conspicuous, you're easier to target. Tigers were priority targets. Every Allied anti-tank gun, tank destroyer, artillery piece, and ground attack aircraft focused fire on Tigers when they appeared. That massive profile and slow speed made them sitting ducks. Here's the part that really destroys the myth. American armored divisions had incredibly detailed casualty statistics. Tankers who survived their first knocked-out Sherman had about an 80% chance of surviving the entire war. Replacement crews, properly trained, had survival rates that would shock you. Meanwhile, German panzer divisions were hemorrhaging experienced crews at unsustainable rates by late 1944. The Sherman also had something no German tank had: standardized parts and rapid repair capability. A Sherman with a damaged engine could be back in action within hours. Entire workshops followed American armored columns with cranes, spare parts, and trained mechanics. Tigers required specialized tools, rare parts, and sometimes had to be completely written off for damage that would be minor on a Sherman. Medical evacuation was another huge factor. American tankers knew that if they got wounded and made it out of their tank, they had access to the best battlefield medicine in the world. Penicillin, whole blood transfusions, and rapid evacuation to field hospitals meant that injuries which would be fatal in other armies were survivable. German tankers, especially on the Eastern Front, often had no such luck. The myth of the Sherman as a death trap largely comes from one terrible source: a book called Death Traps, written by an American maintenance officer named Belton Cooper. He saw destroyed Shermans constantly because that was literally his job, recovering and repairing damaged tanks. He never saw the thousands of Shermans that fought entire campaigns without serious damage. His perspective was completely skewed, but his book became wildly popular and infected the public consciousness. The Tiger, meanwhile, benefited from German propaganda and post-war mythology. Yes, a handful of Tiger aces racked up impressive kill counts. But these were exceptions operating under ideal conditions. The average Tiger crew faced mechanical breakdowns, fuel shortages, overwhelming enemy numbers, and constant air attacks. Their survival rate reflected these realities. So why does the myth persist? Because people love underdogs, and they love the idea of technological superiority. The narrative of plucky American tankers in inferior tanks overcoming German engineering through sheer numbers sounds dramatic. But the truth is more interesting. American tankers survived better because the U.S. military designed their tanks, tactics, and support systems around keeping soldiers alive. The Sherman wasn't perfect. Its early models did have fire problems, its armor was vulnerable to German anti-tank guns, but when you look at the complete picture, crew training, escape hatches, medical support, combined arms tactics, and rapid repair, the Sherman crew member had significantly better odds of going home than almost any other tanker in World War II. The Tiger was a magnificent machine when it worked, but it was also a maintenance nightmare, a fuel hog, a priority target, and ultimately a luxury that Germany couldn't afford to operate properly. Its crews paid the price for German engineering obsession with their lives. Next time someone tells you the Sherman was a death trap, ask them this: if it was so terrible, why did Sherman crews have better survival statistics than almost everyone else? The numbers don't lie, even if the myths refuse to die.